Can you feel a difference? What's that old? I've not done this thousands of times. It's like the old hip bones connected to the thigh. Everybody goes, whoop. Classic. Do your players ever look like this?
Mm-hmm.
And you change. Now, then you stand back up. The energy changes. Now, I think this is so bizarre, but why does this work? I want to show you. Everybody smile. I don't care if you don't feel like smiling. Just smile. Remain as big as you can. How do you feel?
Happy.
Isn't that weird? How does that work? But when you contract these muscles in your cheeks, there are certain chemicals released in the bloodstream that make you feel like that. You can't help it. Weird. When you stand like this and fire your muscles in this sequence, your biochemistry is such that you feel confident. As soon as I change the muscle pattern to this, it changes. All right, so have a seat. So we're going to look at high road behavior. How do we maintain that? Do you need the light, Joe?
Yeah, maybe if we could leave it on. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kia.
That confidence on the field, regardless of circumstances, regardless of what's happening. So I'm going to teach you, again, a two-step process. We're going to take a look at having an intentional reaction when something happens. You remember from Double Goal Coach 1 where we talked about the mistake ritual and the flush? Okay? We want to really focus in on that window right after something happens. And then we're going to help them create a ritual when it's time to get back into the action. And where this work comes from, you know, I was a tennis coach. I had the great pleasure of working, and one of my friends' mentors is Dr. Jim Lair, and he studied this in tennis. Breakthrough research in tennis. He wanted to know what separates the top 50 players from the next crop. Studied it intensively. Really couldn't find anything, but everybody looked good hitting the ball. The breakthrough came when he started to study what the best players in the world do in the 25 seconds between points. Now, and so I took it with our teams at Cal. We had great success. Then I taught a class to high-performance training. I realized, okay, so you do football, you've got soccer, football, volleyball. Do your sports have any downtime or in-between time?
Mm-hmm.
So I had this class, I had all these athletes. I thought, I wonder how this whole thing works. And what we found is that that is such important time, but it's very rarely coached. So I'm going to give you two key steps on how to work with your athletes with that. So step one is, as soon as the action stops, whether it's the end of a point in volleyball or tennis where the play is over, or soccer, there's stoppage in time, a score, whatever, we're training our kids, both physically and mentally, to react intentionally instead of knee-jerk. And knee-jerk can be, you know, kicking and all that kind of stuff that you see. But it's a stimulus response. Remember the model that I said. Something happens, they react. And what we want to train is how they interpret and that they come up with an intentional reaction to maintain that tall, confident posture. Drives how they feel. Does that make sense? Great. And again, it starts as soon as the action stops. They react in a chosen positive manner no matter what just happened. And this is where you come in. If you're working with older kids that have had some success, they probably, along the way, have maybe figured this out, but you're just going to bring it to light even more. If you're working with younger kids, what I think is exciting is with interviews, you can train this from the get-go, that they never learn this other stuff. This is how we do it on this team. This is how we're this tall, confident matador, you know, whatever. My kids would be Power Ranger or something like that, you know, kind of thing. And then you want to apply in your sport what I call the 80-10-10 rule. So how long is a football game?
Professional or high school?
Whatever you're coaching.
3 hours.
3 hours. How long is volleyball?
Hour 45.
Soccer?
Hour and a half.
Right. Tennis could be forever, as we saw. Right? Yeah. But if you take 80% of that time, you know, what's 80% of a volleyball match? What's 80% of a football? I can't do math in my head, so I just say a lot. Right? It's a lot of time. What we want to train there is that 80% of the time, your players just have their confident game face posture going. They can't really tell what happened by the way they're reacting. Okay? And then 10%, they just don't really get to celebrate. But 10% is not very much time. We have kids today, you know, celebrating everything, and emotionally they're all over the map. But yeah, they did something great. It's a high five with a teammate. It's a fist pump. It's whatever they do. Yeah. And then boom. And then 10% is a pump up. They've done their mistake ritual. They've done this, but now this is sort of egregious. This is like, "Argh!" But they do something to like fire them up. Hand here, that's an uplifting pump up, not the squishing down. Okay. Now, what's amazing is that the longest time frame that this ever is, I'm just talking about, this is only 3 seconds. And in soccer, it could be less because it's a continuous sport. But tennis, volleyball, football, the max that this whole window happens is 3 seconds. That's it. So we just had a lot of conversation for a very short, but it is the key window in life, that 3 seconds after something happens. So training that, does that make sense? Great. So how do we do this? How many of you, we talked about this on the end, how many of you want sportsmanship to show up on game day?
Yeah.
You darn well better practice it. So huge with this, because, emotions are like muscles. The ones you train the most become the strongest. Rise to the top, quickest under pressure. So if you want this to happen, we need to practice it at practice. And to me, it's every time they're doing a drill. They're scrimmaging. And they are impeccable. You train them to be impeccable. That every time something ends, they have eliminated the anger, the dejection that they're working on, their confident stance, or their pump up, or their celebrate. Okay. Apply it in competition, I say, and then even there, evaluate it. You can self-evaluate, but I would even say when you're doing positive charting, you're charting this on kids. How are they doing? Giving them some feedback. Maybe that's something that you're videotaping. And then you ask them to self-evaluate. How did they do, and how can I improve? Really keep it on the forefront. Because that moment is the cascade moment. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's a lot for 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now that it's ended, they've done that, now they're going to get ready to go back in the action. They're going to get ready to play the next point, balls, the next play. We want to establish a re-entry ritual. And again, sort of like stimulus response, it's used right before the action resumes. And it's there to help them really deepen concentration and adjust their energy levels right before they're ready to go. Okay? Physically, what you want to get them to think about is, how do I need to look when the action resumes? We've talked about the tall, confident posture, right? But if I'm serving, what do I need to look like? I'm getting ready to receive the snap, or I'm on the line, or the plays I'm about to be served to, or whatever. What do I need to look like right before the action resumes? And this is where you go into depth, like visually define it. Make them, become that acting coach. Find all the little nuances. What do they need to project with their body, kind of like that exercise that we did. And then mentally, you train them in that moment, that small window before the action resumes. What's the situation? Time on the clock, score, whatever. And what's my job? So they've physically got their body in the right position, and they've got their mind focused on what it is that they're supposed to be doing. That make sense? Great. So again, we talked a little bit about situations where this can come into play. And what I want you to do right now is, you learn best by doing. You're going to have to go back and teach this and coach this. So what I want you to do is, let's imagine that let's all be football. Okay? And I want you to think about the position that you work with. And I want you to partner up. And I want you to teach that skill. What is it that you want them to look like? What do they need to project? What do you want them to look like? And what are the cues they need to pay attention to, and give them an example of their job? So, Joe, if you're going to work with Kihai, you're going to coach each other. Okay. He's a quarterback, you're a receiver, whatever. Coach each other. Okay? And then you guys pick, what position do you coach?
Defensive line.
Oh, awesome. I can tell you a lot about that. So, defensive lineman, and you're going to be...
I know, quarterbacks.
There you go. Okay.
anybody else's eyes.